This is Visitor's Book, and I'm Maija, your host. In this program, we're going to be meeting with diplomats and foreigners who live here in Pakistan, and we're going to find out what they really think about the country. So let's go. So our guest today is Blair Glencorse, the founder of the Accountability Lab. We're here at his house, so let's go find him. Hi, Blair.
Hi.
Thanks so much for having me. You have such a lovely house, beautiful garden.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, sure. Okay, let's first sanitize our hands.
Absolutely.
As we have to. Do you want some? Let me just...
Thank you.
So tell me, how many years has it been for you in Pakistan now, altogether?
I first came here in 2012.
Okay.
So 8 years ago, but started working here much more intensively about 5 years ago. And I've been living here properly for about 2.5 years.
Great. And you came here because of your wife, who's American Pakistani, right?
Yes, her parents are Pakistani. They're from Karachi, but she grew up in the US.
Okay.
But came back here. She got a job in 2012 with the US Institute of Peace here in Pakistan. So came back with her initially in that way, and then began to work here about 3 years later.
And did the Accountability Lab already exist back then, or that
At that time in 2012, I was just setting up my organization, which is called the Accountability Lab. But we weren't working in Pakistan, we were working in some other countries, but subsequently we began to work here.
All right. And where did you meet your wife? How did that happen?
I met her in Washington, DC. I'm from the UK originally, but was based in the US. And we were at an event actually in Washington, DC, focusing on Pakistan and Afghanistan. She used to work for the US government on these things.
Okay.
So we met in that way, which was great.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I mean, being from the UK, you must have had some kind of an idea of Pakistan. Like, how much did you know? What did you expect the country to be like?
Well, before I first came here in 2012, I'd been working for the previous 5 years with Ashraf Ghani, the now president of Afghanistan.
Yeah, okay.
So knew a fair amount about Pakistan. Of course, you can't really talk about what's going on there without also talking about the region. So we knew a fair amount about it. Of course, growing up, there's a big Pakistani population in the UK. Had a number of Pakistani friends, and so was somewhat familiar, but was very excited to come and see what it was all about for myself.
Yeah, I mean, so how long did you first come here for? Was it like a quick visit or longer?
A quick visit, I think it was maybe 2 weeks.
2 weeks. But Islamabad or Karachi?
Just in Islamabad and Lahore. But then continued to come back, of course, to see Nadia, my wife, my now wife. And then as we began to think about setting up an accountability lab here, the work became more intensive and the visits became longer and more work focused. Yes.
Well, do you remember what your first impression of the country was when you came here? Like, was it as you expected it to be, or was there something surprising?
I loved it. I mean, it was all new to me. But one of the things that I would always say about Pakistan is that people are incredibly welcoming and generous. And so, never felt in any way like I wasn't at home, like people weren't appreciative of me being here. And so, loved it. Of course, there was lots to discover and lots to learn and things that I didn't know. But really from the start, it's been one of my favorite places to visit.
Seriously? Wow. By then, you had obviously already visited a bunch of countries, also in the developing world. How would you say Pakistan was different from those other experiences you'd had traveling?
Good question. I'd spent a lot of time in West Africa in particular, which is very different, of course, in many ways, culturally, politically, economically. But one thing I find in Pakistan in particular, and this relates to the work that we do, is that there's an incredible energy and capacity for change amongst young people in particular.
Oh, really?
Really world-class young people in Pakistan who do incredible things. The kind of ideas that they're coming up with, the kind of change that they're trying to create is really, really impressive in ways that I sometimes haven't seen in other places. So I think that's obviously really great.
Why is that? Any guesses?
I mean, I think part of it is born out of the challenges that Pakistan faces, of course. Part of it, I think, is that there are just a lot of there's a lot of social capital. I think if you scratch the surface, there's a lot of young people that want to come together and do things together to improve their societies, and lots of ways that they can support each other even when it's difficult. So although it can be challenging, I think that's what gives me energy and gives me hope for the future everywhere, but in Pakistan in particular. It's just really great to see.
Wow. But in 2012, the security situation here was still a little bit different. Like now it's pretty safe, especially in the bigger cities like Islamabad and Lahore. But were you worried at all when you first came here?
I was a little bit worried, of course, as you know, Pakistan. The reputation that Pakistan has internationally does not always correspond to the reality, which is a pity because it is, as you said, extremely safe. The people are incredibly generous and nice.
Exactly.
It's a wonderful place to live and to visit. So I was a little bit apprehensive, but I would be apprehensive, if I was going to any new country. I think for the first time.
Because you don't know.
Absolutely,
really
you can have issues wherever you go. I think it's just a question of of being sensible, of understanding the context, of respecting local culture, all of these things that make a visit, safe and more enjoyable.
Yeah.
So any apprehension I did have was quickly dispelled, as I said, by the incredible people and the amazing culture here that is very welcoming.
And what about your family? Did they have any apprehensions themselves about you coming here?
I think they probably felt more or less the same way, but as you pointed out, I'd spent a lot of time in the developing world. Before that, I've been, to all sorts of places that are perceived to be difficult or a little bit dangerous. So I think they just thought it was another thing that I was doing, and they haven't been to visit yet, but they're very excited to do so. In fact, they were planning on it, but then with coronavirus, it's been more difficult. But perhaps if things get better soon.
Hopefully. So then, as you said, you started visiting more and more often, and that was then what finally made you guys move here. And what was the year exactly when you finally moved?
With the organisation, with the accountability lab?
No, you yourself.
Me myself? Wife. About 5 years ago, I started coming on longer trips. But it was about 2.5 years ago that I fully made the move from DC in the US.
Okay, so that's where you were based, Where were you working before?
Before the Accountability Lab, I worked with the current president of Afghanistan. Helped him set up a think tank in the US called the Institute for State Effectiveness. So I was working with him in the US.
Right, and then from there
then from there, set up the Accountability Lab in 2015, sorry.
Okay.
And then, came here after that.
And then you got married to your wife. When was that?
Recently, last September.
Oh, wow. Congratulations.
Yeah, so under a year ago. Thanks.
Was the wedding here or in the US?
It was in the US.
Okay. But it must have been at least a little bit Pakistani, right?
Well, all of her, it was very small. We just had our families, literally just our parents and our siblings.
Yeah.
So, of course, her side of the family is Pakistani, which was great. And we had, the night before the wedding, had a big Pakistani meal at her mother's house. And so it wasn't your normal Pakistani wedding. It was very different, but it was very nice.
And as you mentioned, your wife is from Karachi. Was she born there or in the US?
She was born in the US.
Okay.
But her parents were born grew up in Karachi.
Okay. And had she spent a lot of time here before she moved with you?
Growing up, she used to come every summer. And her family actually moved back here from the US when she was about 7 for a few years.
Okay.
But at that point, it was very difficult times in Karachi. So they ended up moving back to the US. But then she came here to work with the Citizens Foundation one summer while she was studying in the US and fell in love with that organization and with Pakistan again.
Yeah.
And so ended up moving here, as I said, for a job in 2012 and has been here ever since.
Great. And what does she do now?
Now she still works for the Citizens Foundation, but she's become an expert on education policy and implementation in Pakistan and globally. So she also consults and writes about education issues.
Great. And she's even written a book about the education system in Pakistan, right?
Yes, she writes a lot about education in Pakistan, is closely involved with thinking and policy around education issues. So,
What was the book about exactly?
It's about education in Pakistan and what's kind of gone wrong and what to do about some of the challenges that education.
And she's also a journalist, right?
Yes, so she writes about these things,
Okay.
education in particular, but has also written about some other things related to aid and development in Pakistan.
Did it help you that your wife is Pakistani American when you came here, that she sort of helped you understand the country and the culture better?
Absolutely, of course it helps a lot. She explains everything to me when I don't know it. Of course, she speaks Urdu, so can get around much more easily. I'm picking up a lot now from her as well in that respect. And so it's been, of course, much easier and better to be here with her, and I've really got to know the culture in a way I probably wouldn't if I was just a foreigner here for a few years doing a job and then going home.
Well, what about your friend circle here in Islamabad? Are they mostly foreigners or Pakistani?
It's a mix. I think that it's a good mix of some foreigners, but a lot of Pakistanis too. Some really great Pakistani friends who I'm sure will be lifelong friends at this point. And as you know, with the international community here, often it can be quite transitory. People come for a few years and then they leave.
Exactly.
So, I've had many friends who've been here and then gone elsewhere, and new ones that are coming in, both Pakistani and
exactly. What would you say has been the biggest difference in your everyday life here in Pakistan as compared to how your life used to be in the US or in the UK?
Good question. I think here I have to think a bit more about what I'm doing every day, because it's not where I grew up. I don't speak the language fluently, so I need to navigate a bit in ways that is a little bit easier in the UK or in the US, just given that I'm much more familiar with those places. So I have to think a bit harder, but that's good. It's part of the learning process, and it's part of the joy of being here.
Do you mean like in a cultural sense, maybe?
Definitely cultural, yeah.
Like how does stuff work, basically?
Exactly. How does stuff work? How should I interact with people?
Okay.
How do I get around all of these sorts of things? Which now I've been here for a while is of course much easier. But to begin with, at least, that was certainly one big change.
Yeah. Did you find it challenging, or it was just kind of like a learning experience?
It's a learning experience, I think, and it continues to be. Occasionally a little bit challenging when things sort of don't go to plan or they don't work, but that's the case everywhere. It's not just the case in Pakistan, but it's been, as I said, it's been great, and we're living here now and want to continue to do so, because it feels like my home at this point.
Great. So the first time you came here, you mentioned you saw Islamabad and Lahore, right?
And Lahore, yes.
Did you go to the border there, to Wagah border?
No, I haven't been, actually.
You still haven't been?
Still haven't been. I'd like to go.
You have to.
Yes.
Did you see like the Boccie Mosque and the old city?
We did, I did all of the sort of touristy things in Lahore, did a tour of the old city.
Did you like it?
Loved it. Beautiful. Yeah, really, really nice, and great food.
Yeah.
And we have some friends down there too, so they showed us around. So
that's great.
Yeah, it's been great. And since then I've done some work in Lahore too, so I've become a bit more familiar with the city.
Right. And that's a completely different city when you compare it to Islamabad, right?
It is very different, but I love Islamabad too. It's quiet and green, and very livable. So it's a nice place to be.
Yeah, I mean, you don't really have this like big city feel when you're here, right?
No, and that's what I like about it. To be honest.
Where are you from in the UK exactly?
I'm from sort of central England. Nottingham is the biggest city that's sort of nearby. But we actually live a bit to the east of there in the countryside.
Oh, okay.
So I'm used to slightly more of a slower pace.
Okay, so maybe Lahore or Karachi would have been too hectic.
They are. They're nice to visit. But I prefer living in Islamabad, I think.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to take a short break. See you in a bit. Welcome back. I'm here in conversation with Blair Glencorse, the founder of Accountability Lab. So, you are the founder of this organization.
Yes.
And you started it 5 years ago, you mentioned?
In Pakistan 5 years ago,
Yeah.
actually. The organization as a whole 8 years ago.
Okay, excellent. So what does it do exactly? What's the basic idea behind it?
The basic idea is we're trying to make governance work better for people. So we work to build a cohort of active citizens and responsible leaders, and to make institutions more accountable, particularly government institutions, more accountable to citizens.
Okay.
So we do a variety of different things, but one big part of what we do is we run positive engagement campaigns, particularly with young people.
All right.
So for example, there's a campaign that we run in 9 countries now, including Pakistan, called Integrity Icon, which is a TV show to find the most honest government officials in Pakistan.
Oh, no way. Oh, that sounds fascinating.
Through which we ask people to nominate these government officials, get lots of nominations, select the top 5, and then we put them on TV and radio, and people can vote for their favorites.
Oh, wow.
And this is important because it changes the narrative away from the problems and the finger pointing that tends to go on, and towards the heroes and the solutions and the people doing the right thing. And we think that's part of what needs to happen everywhere.
And that's like positive enforcement, like that's
exactly.
That's really nice.
It's changing the narratives. It's positive reinforcement of the good things in society.
Yeah.
So that's one part of what we do. We do a lot of training and capacity building with young people. We run incubators, we run boot camps, and different training programs to help young people develop the skills and ideas and tools and networks that they need to change society in the ways that they want to change it.
Okay, fascinating.
And now we're increasingly doing a lot of work with communities, including around coronavirus, to gather information and work with local power holders to make decisions more effectively and solve problems in communities in different ways.
How did you come up with this idea?
As I mentioned, I was working previously with the World Bank and then with the now president of Afghanistan, and spent a lot of time through those jobs talking to young people in particular all over the world. And I remember one instance in particular, I was in southern Nepal, talking to a group of young people and asking them about the challenges that they faced. And they said, the biggest challenge is corruption and lack of accountability.
Right.
We don't have good education, we don't have good water supply, all of these other things, but we know that these are just a symptom of these other big problems of a lack of accountability and a lack of justice, and that's what we need to work on. And we have a lot of good ideas to fix those problems, but we don't have the support that we need to do it.
All right.
And so that was a bit of a light bulb, and it made me think about whether there was an organization that was helping people like them to do this sort of thing, and working in partnership with them to lead the kind of change that they wanted. And I didn't see one really doing that in meaningful ways, particularly not in places like southern Nepal. So a little while later began to build that organization, which has now become the Accountability Lab. And we started in Nepal actually, but quickly there was a group of young people in Liberia in West Africa who said, well, we'd like to do the same thing and set up our own Accountability Lab here. So we helped them do that, and since then it's grown organically. So we now have 9 accountability labs in different countries, including Pakistan, to develop these ideas, to build this new generation of active citizens and responsible leaders, and to push for more accountable institutions.
Wow, that's really great, because like you focus on helping the people help themselves, kind of like, rather than going to like a more like top-down approach, right?
Absolutely, I think all of the work that we do is predicated on the idea that communities and citizens have the solutions to the problems that they face everywhere. And our role is hopefully, if we can, to catalyze those, to help support those. They know what they need and what they want, and if we can help that to happen, then that's a good thing. If it's moving towards more accountability and more equality and justice and transparency.
Have you had any like big success stories so far?
Well, the Integrity Icon campaign that I mentioned has been one. Not just in terms of the reach and the narrative that it's created. I mean, we now have millions of people every year watching this show and talking about it and trying to change their behaviors and the behaviors of others as a result of it. But also through some of the winners that we have that we found through this show, the integrity icons themselves, who with our support afterwards and through the credibility and exposure that we've given them, have gone on to do incredible things in their countries. For example, there was one winner a few years ago in Mali in Africa who was working in the Ministry of Justice, and after we name and famed him, as we call it with Integrity Icon, he was made the Minister of Justice explicitly because they realised that he was a person of integrity.
Great.
Another really great story that I love here in Pakistan is a lady from Balochistan who won Integrity Icon 2 years ago, called Batul Asadi. She's a Hazara woman, the first Hazara woman to ever be made a assistant commissioner in Balochistan.
Wow.
And since she won, she's been promoted. She's been doing all sorts of other amazing things to push not just for accountability and integrity within public service in Balochistan, but also for women's rights and for gender equality.
Excellent.
And when we found her, I think she was the first and only assistant commissioner that was a lady. Now there are 11 female assistant commissioners in Balochistan, and many of them have said it's because we saw her example and it showed us what's possible and that we can do this as women, and we can be people of integrity within public service. So that kind of thing, it's really shifting the face of government and the inclusion and of processes of governance, and that sort of thing is really exciting.
Great. And you mentioned there was a funny story where you ended up going to the Winter Olympics with the ski team of Ghana, right?
Yes.
How did that happen?
Yes, the Winter Olympics obviously is winter sports, and Ghana and other hot countries are not known for participating, but in the Winter Olympics in 2010 in Canada, there was a friend of mine who came across a Ghanaian skier, one of the very few, a few years before that, and began to train him, and he eventually qualified for the Winter Olympics.
Okay.
And my friend said, would you like to come along and sort of be part of the support team and help out for a few weeks? So this wasn't related to my work, but I went along.
Maybe there was a connection there, but no.
But it was really, really fun.
Right.
And his goal was not to come last in the skiing, and he came second to last.
Okay.
So it was very, very excited, and there was a lot of celebration, and it was good fun.
Okay. Wow. So you've definitely gotten to travel a lot.
I have. I've been very lucky.
Through this work as well.
Yes.
Wow. So what exactly do you focus on here in Pakistan? Are there any particular projects that you don't have elsewhere, maybe? What do you do here?
We've been doing all of the projects that I mentioned. We've run this Integrity Icon campaign. We do a lot of these sort of youth training workshops and boot camps and incubators. We've been working with, as I mentioned, some local governments and communities to fix problems in Quetta, for example, around water and solid waste management issues. But one thing we have been doing here that we haven't been doing as much elsewhere is what we call youth peace incubators in 4 or 5 different universities around Pakistan. So working with students in particular to develop creative ideas for civic engagement and civic participation, both within their institutions and the communities around them. And that's been incredible to see. We've been doing a lot in South Punjab in particular, but also in Karachi and KP and elsewhere. And again, as I mentioned, I think some of the creativity and energy we see coming out of those universities and out of young people here is just remarkable, and so we're excited to carry that work on in the future too.
It's important to tap into that, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So corruption was obviously a big theme in the previous elections. Now, have you seen any kind of progress on that front since in Pakistan? Great
question. It's obviously a big priority for the current governments, certainly in what they say rhetorically. In practice, I think the record is a bit more mixed.
So there's still work to be done.
There's still work to be done, as there is everywhere. I think the first point I would make is corruption is by no means just a problem in Pakistan.
Yeah, exactly.
And from the UK, it's a big problem there.
Yeah,
I lived in the US, it's a massive problem there. So it's a problem that we all have to deal with, and we can't do it individually, we have to do it collectively. But I think it should continue to be a priority for the government here. I do see some good things happening, and particularly, as I mentioned, sort of at the very local level, with some of the people that we're working with, we're seeing interesting ways that that people are addressing these problems, making sure that citizens' voices are included in decision making, which I think is one key way to prevent corruption, making information more transparent, all of these sorts of things. The government of KP, I think, has been doing some really interesting stuff in terms of governance dashboards and open data and all of this kind of thing. But Pakistan is a very big and complex country, and of course there are going to be issues that take longer to address.
Yeah, I mean, you can't fix something in a couple of months, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think there is progress, but there's still much more to do.
Yeah, so it's going in the right direction at the moment.
Yeah.
Right. So how did you end up working in this field? I mean, you've obviously had an interest in social issues for a long time. Did you have like some kind of a personal experience that inspired you, or how did that happen?
When I finished school in the UK, I went to Zimbabwe in Africa to teach in a school, and that got me really interested, of course, in sort of the differences that exist, the inequalities that exist, some of the development challenges that need to be addressed. And so after that, I went to study these issues a bit further at graduate school. Okay. And then, as I mentioned, got a job at the World Bank working on what they called at that point fragile states, so countries that had difficult issues of fragility or conflict, including Afghanistan and various countries in Africa. And throughout all of this, just became increasingly interested in accountability and came to a few conclusions. One is that accountability is really what it is all about, unless we can get this relationship right between people in power of all kinds, not just governments, but people in business, people in civil society, people in the media, and citizens, then we're not going to be able to fix the problems that exist. Second of all, that this is a long-term process. It's going to be a generational change.
Yeah.
So it has to be about young people. These, as we discussed, things like corruption, we're not going to fix those in the next year or two.
Exactly.
One government is not going to be able to deal with all of this. It's probably going to take a generation. So young people coming up through the system now are the ones I think that we really need to work with, because if we can help them build this coalition, build this new generation that want things to be different, then I think maybe 20 or 30 years from now they can be different. And the third point is that if that's the case, then we have to be creative. Young people, I would argue, need to be engaged in fun, innovative ways. We need to meet them where they are, as it were, rather than where we want them to be. So that doesn't mean lecturing them about not being corrupt and telling them what kind of people to be. It's about giving them the tools and the opportunities and the knowledge to change their societies in the ways that they want, which I found are generally for those societies to be more inclusive and more fair and more accountable. So that's exactly what the Accountability Lab is trying to do, as we discussed, really support people with good ideas to change the way that they interact and to make people in power more accountable.
Do you notice that young people are maybe a little bit more enthusiastic about changing things in the society, or are they just as cynical as maybe older people sometimes, thinking like, oh, there's nothing we can do, this is how it's always been, and so on?
I think there are people of all ages, of course, who are excited and enthusiastic about changing systems, and we need people of all ages. This has to be an intergenerational process.
Exactly.
But the older generation have often grown up within these systems, have become used to these systems, and sometimes I think can find it a little bit more difficult to demonstrate change or to understand how the change might happen.
Yeah.
Young people, as we know, are more connected than ever before globally, both digitally and in other ways. I think they're more willing to challenge the systems that exist than many other generations before them. Particularly now with coronavirus and with everything else that's going on globally, the massive economic global downturn, some of the political instability. It's the young people that are going to bear the brunt of these challenges the most, and so have the most to gain from changing the way things work, whether it's accountability or climate change or anything else. So I think these are the people that we need to work with and that can lead the change that we need.
And that reminds me, you mentioned that you're doing something about coronavirus here in Pakistan. How does something like this type of a pandemic connect? I mean, how is that related to accountability?
Great question. I mean, if we look at how coronavirus started in Pakistan, which I think was with the pilgrims that came back from Iran who passed through Taftan, I think the way that we all interact with each other during coronavirus is a personal accountability issue. You know, we all need to take responsibility now for the way that we respond to this. So there's all sorts of different elements, I think, that come. So I can tell you a lot more about what we're doing specifically with the Accountability Lab. Because one of the other big issues, I think, around accountability is misinformation and fake news.
Absolutely, big issue here.
And rumours. And so we at the Accountability Lab, we're not a healthcare organisation. You know, we haven't been on the front lines of response to coronavirus from that perspective. But on the issue of fake news and rumours, we've been developing what we call the Coronavirus Civic Action campaign, which gathers rumours and misinformation from communities all over Pakistan, and then debunks those or responds to them with validated information in useful infographics that people can understand in local languages, and also with audio versions. And then we work with radio stations to put these out to people on the radio as well, to make sure that people have validated, truthful information about all sorts of issues, not just the healthcare issues, but also what to do during quarantine, or you know, how to access government services if there's a lockdown, all of those sorts of issues. So helping people navigate the crisis themselves, and then begin to fix problems that might arise, because once we have a shared basis of understanding, that provides, you know, the entry point for changing some of the policies or some of the responses.
Perfect. I'm going to take a short break. I'll see you in a bit. Welcome back. I'm here in conversation with Blair Glencorse, the founder of the Accountability Lab. And while we were on the topic of the coronavirus, let's sanitize our hands again. Can never be too careful. How have you been handling these past couple of months? I mean, have you been mostly staying at home, or, I mean, you haven't been going to your office anymore, have you?
Yes, so we've been very much at home. Of course, with the lockdown, our office has been closed. We haven't been doing our normal work in communities and in universities and meeting people. So we've shifted everything virtually as much as we can. A lot of video conferences, a lot of WhatsApp coordination. As I mentioned, a lot of work through radio and other means that don't necessitate in-person interaction. So it's been difficult, as it has for us as it has for everyone, but so far we're managing.
Have you had to cancel a lot of events or postpone projects because of that?
We've been trying to keep everything going and just change or adapt the formats. So having conversations, through WhatsApp or online, one way or another. We have postponed one or two events, or just have begun waiting until perhaps things open up and we can do them in a slightly different way. But I think at this point we're realizing that this isn't just going to be a few months.
Exactly.
It could be definitely the rest of this year or even longer, and we're going to have to work out how to adapt generally to this new normal in Pakistan and everywhere. So we're thinking hard about that.
Has it been difficult for you personally? Like, are you a very outgoing person usually?
I do generally enjoy meeting new people and learning new things and being in new spaces. So it's been very different for me, although I'm based in Pakistan. My job, because we work across 9 different countries, generally requires a lot of travel. And this is certainly the longest period I've ever been in Pakistan in one go.
Actually, that's the same for me.
Over 3 months now. And it's actually been great in that respect, that I've really had the time to get to know my community a bit better. Been taking Urdu lessons every day.
Oh, really?
Which was really difficult previously. So there's been many opportunities and good things, but equally with the recognition that this has been an incredibly difficult time for many people. And so also have been trying within our small community in Islamabad to do as much as we can to help out others and try and help everyone get through this as best they can.
I think that's something that's quite impressive about Pakistanis, is this approach to charity that the country has, that so many people really feel for those who are in less fortunate situations than themselves, and you can really see a lot of efforts being made on that account.
Absolutely, especially with Zagat and Eid this year coming in the middle of this crisis. Absolutely, it's more important than ever that we come together and we all try and do as much as we can to help each other.
Exactly. Is there anything that you've noticed that people maybe in your neighborhood aren't maybe taking so seriously certain things that they should, or is everyone like following the SOPs here?
I mean, we're in F7 and it's it's a nice neighborhood, and there aren't that many people around. It's easy enough for people to socially distance. In a way that I fully understand that it isn't in many parts of Pakistani cities. Generally now there's just been an order that everyone has to wear a mask whenever they're in public in Islamabad, and I've now seen people doing that. I think generally here in this particular neighborhood it's being taken seriously, but the cases are going up rapidly despite all of this. So I would encourage everyone to continue to wear masks, to try and stay away from others as much as they can.
Exactly.
I know it can be really difficult, but we need to wash our hands. And the other thing, of course, that relates to our work is we need to make sure that we're sharing the right information with each other, so that rumours don't go around in ways that can actually undermine safe behaviours and the healthcare of all of us. Yeah,
and I think another important thing is, like, if you have to meet people, as we are now, do it outside rather than inside, right?
Absolutely.
And keep proper distance, and people just have to be very careful about these things. And I think in Pakistan it's very difficult for people to socially distance themselves. Like, it's such a part of the culture that you meet people all the time. So if you have to, just do it outside and in very small groups. And
exactly, absolutely.
So you mentioned that you've started taking Urdu lessons. Have you started any other new hobbies during the lockdown? Any other ways of dealing with the boredom?
I've been running a lot, which is something I did before, but I've been listening to podcasts while I've been running, which I never used to do. I used to listen to music, and it's been great. It's a great way to multitask, to stay fit if you can, and to learn something at the same time. So I've been listening to podcasts about failure and about leadership and about development and about corruption and all sorts of good stuff. So that's one other thing that I've picked up that's been useful.
Yeah, and that's another great thing about Islamabad, that we have, like the Margala Hills here and stuff like that. Like, you can easily do a lot of outdoor activities here, which is definitely safer than doing anything indoors.
Yeah, exactly.
These days.
Obviously, it's not feasible to do anything indoors at the moment. It's getting really hot now, but
it is,
but it's been really good.
Yeah, great. So you mentioned you've been here now for more than 3 months in one go, which is longer than you've ever spent here. Did you have like a planned visit back to the UK or the US that you had to cancel?
Yes, I mean, a lot of this period I was supposed to be in, not so much in the UK or the US, but in some of the other countries that we work in. We've just started a new office in Zimbabwe.
Oh, really?
And I was supposed to be there to help with that process, etc. And at one point I was supposed to go to the US, and that was cancelled. So yes, things have changed dramatically, and we've all obviously just adapted, and we'll see when the travel is feasible again. I know the airspace, I think, has opened again now in Pakistan, but I imagine flights are quite expensive, and it'll be a while before things get back to normal, if they ever do. And I think actually we've realised that going forwards we will do things in different ways, and like I said, do a lot more virtually, and perhaps find ways to engage in communities that don't require as much travel, which would be good for the environment, would be good for our budgets, and good for everyone, I think. So maybe hopefully this is a way to shift to a different way of doing things.
Yeah, and I mean, of course, the US and UK, they've gone through a very difficult period. It's been much worse there than it has yet been in Pakistan. How has your family been dealing with it back home?
Yes, I think this crisis has exposed governance and accountability challenges, even in places that that we think don't have them to such a large degree, and the UK and the US in particular. I think it's been really difficult and will continue to be so in those places. Luckily, my immediate family have been fine. They haven't caught coronavirus. But my parents are elderly. I'm worried that this is by no means over, and they've had to deal with sort of the lockdown in the same way that many others have. So I think it's been challenging. My sister is pregnant, and there's using healthcare systems at the moment. Even for unrelated coronavirus, unrelated issues. Could be challenging everywhere. If you look at the death rates in other countries, including the UK and the US, for other sorts of illnesses and health challenges at the moment, they're higher than normal because of these issues. The attention, the money, and the challenges around coronavirus are having knock-on effects. So there are all sorts of issues that people are dealing with, and generally, my heart goes out to those who are having these sorts of issues and have suffered from this. It's been very, very difficult. Very
difficult time. But let's talk about something a bit more cheerful now. Once this is all over, where do you want to travel first?
Well, my wife's family are in the US, as I mentioned. So I think the first stop is to go over there. Okay. The UK currently has a 2-week quarantine in place. So it's going to be more difficult, I think, to go there, just to have 2 or 3 weeks, to spend in doing that. So it'll probably be the US. Okay. But actually, as soon as we can, we want to get back here to Pakistan. I think this is where we want to be, and is a place where we have a lot of work to do, and so that's the plan. Maybe the US for a trip, but then back here. Yeah, and maybe you can do some traveling here. Have you been around the country much? A certain amount. I've been to all of the big cities: Lahore, Karachi, Peshawar, Multan. Oh wow! Just before the lockdown, actually, we went for a weekend to Multan. Oh, very nice. Which was beautiful, incredible history and architecture, and we actually have an office there now for some of the work we're doing down there. So I hope to go back. Yeah. Last summer we went up to Hunza. Oh, amazing. And Gilgit, which was incredible. We drove up there for a couple of days. So drove all the way up from Islamabad, which was breathtaking. So I've seen a certain amount of the country. Yeah. I'd love to go to interior Sindh and back up into the mountains to a few different places before long, if it's possible. Yeah, hopefully soon. This will all be over and you get to explore the country more. Yes. So do you think Pakistan is the country where you'll end up living for the rest of your life, or are you planning on maybe moving back to the West at some point? We'll see what happens. I think through my wife, we're now tied to Pakistan in really meaningful ways, and we really enjoy it here. So I could certainly see us spending significant amounts of time here, definitely. It's a great place to live, as we've talked about, and and to be honest, the West, isn't as appealing for many reasons as I think it used to be. Countries like Pakistan, and particularly Pakistan, I think have huge amounts to offer. Are up and coming in all sorts of ways, and so I think we'll definitely spend lots of time here. Yeah, excellent. Okay, then it's time for our rapid fire round. Great. Are you ready? Ready. Okay. Shalwar kameez or suit? Ooh, shalwar kameez. Yeah? Okay. Why not? It's cooler. Yeah, it's more comfortable. Yeah, true. Lahore or Karachi? Ooh, Karachi. All right. Because of your wife? Because my wife, her family there. Yeah. Really good food, the seaside. True. DC or Islamabad? Islamabad. Ah, very nice. Yeah, nice place to live. Yeah. Okay. Rawalpindi or Manchester? Good question. I've never actually been to Manchester. Oh, you've never been? Even though I'm from the UK. But I have been to Rawalpindi several times. All right. So Rawalpindi. Okay, fair enough. English or Pakistani breakfast? I'm still a fan of the English breakfast, I have to say. Yeah. Fair enough. I grew up on that. First thought that comes to your head when I say Lahore Fort? Beautiful.
Yeah? Chicken biryani.
Yes, definitely. Oh, the first thought, sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely is the first thought, but delicious.
Yeah, great. Hunza.
Beautiful. Lakes, mountains.
Great. The shrines of Multan.
Ancient.
Great. Anarkali Bazaar in Lahore.
Busy.
Yes, very busy. Oxford Street.
Shopping.
The best thing about Pakistan.
People.
Great. That's it.
Excellent.
Okay.
Thank you.
Then it's time for you to sign our visitor's book.
Thank you. Wow.
Okay, so you can just write your name and your comments there.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Let's see. All right, let's see what you wrote. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about my love for Pakistan. Excellent. Thank you so much for having us here today and telling us about the Accountability Lab. And I hope you get to visit your home country one day soon and all of this is over.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right. That's it for today. Please join me again next time. And don't forget to follow us on our social media accounts at indus.news and stay home, stay safe. Goodbye.